Yo, Shawn, what's going
Boys,
on, brother?
how you feeling?
Man, I'm good. I'm good. I was, getting it popping over on Facebook, about this, our episode today. But I mean, it was, it's funny is we just got finished talking offline about, relationships and marriage and things like that. You know what I'm saying? So it's gonna be a good episode. How you feeling, bro?
I'm good, man. I feel so relaxed. Like
Okay.
I'm on my break right now for spring break. I'm chilling, bro. I'm taking Zora to work, and then I come home. I play the game a little bit. I watch a couple of YouTube videos and just relax, man. What about you?
Now with it, man. I just kind of kicked it with y'all, chopped it up, saw y'all new crib. You know what I'm saying? It was actually a perfect, takeoff to, today's topic, talking about, smart financial planning for starting a family. And I think one of the biggest things that we have is a lot of people they don't get it right. And some of the reasons that they don't get it right is they don't look at the numbers, right? And so, we want people to tap in and look at the numbers and be intentional. Even those, and I want to preface this, even those people who have already made decisions with children, but they're not married yet, they're not, committed or whatever, they can still take away some key points from this because, they still have the ability to make more kids, right? They may want to plan. But the truth is, in today's day and age, it costs $17,000 roughly a year. And what was funny is earlier I made a post on Facebook, and basically I was talking about the fact that making $100,000 a year won't save you from getting divorced. And here's why, right? Here's some reasons. Your parents were bad with money. You dated based on potential versus reality, right? So you ended up in a relationship or you ended up having a child with somebody that they look good on paper, but the truth is we didn't look at their history, right? You're going to get a 30-year mortgage instead of a 15, right? So everybody can kind of dip in and get something out of this because when you look at the 15, you pay it off faster. You have to be more intentional with your money because it's typically more money up front than you expanding it out 30 years. But at the same time, if you look at that 30-year mortgage, a lot of times people end up paying 700,000 for a $500,000 home. That $200,000 you could have taken and put into your retirement. And then the fourth one was you want 3+ kids, which will cost you $900,000 plus over their lifespan to raise them into adulthood, and that's not even including college, right? So it's pretty crazy out here. What says Shawn?
Man, it's a lot in today's topics. Like, I mean, just simply having a conversation like with the person that you think you'll be with. I think you should start there. Simple conversations about your goals, their goals, and then if you want to have children, right? Do you even want kids?
Mm-hmm.
And what does that even look like? If you don't have kids, what does it look like when you do have kids? And then I feel
Mm-hmm.
like the conversation gets a lot deeper when you decide you want to have kids because you want to ask yourself, do you want your children to go to church all the time? Do you want them to go to a public school or private school? What is the role of the grandparents, right, in the
Mm-hmm.
primary stages of their life? And you might realize like y'all don't align on a lot of things, and you got to find a middle ground. But I
Mm-hmm.
definitely think it's a lot of conversations that need to be had. Like, should you rent? Should you buy? It's just so many conversations that just need to be had.
100%, 100%. And that comes down to us talking about wisdom trumps experience, right? One of the mistakes that I made early on is I had a child before I was ready financially to have a child. So most people coming from my background, real quick, shout out to Zoe. We appreciate you, family, for tapping in. Most people who come from my background would say, "Hey, you got a college degree, you have a job, so you're good to go to start family planning." I know people to this day who are struggling. They're living off of one income and they making things work for now. But as we go on and we talk about, go out through the article, life starts to get more expensive. You thought you got past the $20,000 a year daycare hump. Wait till you get to those older years. So when it comes down to, preparing and having vital conversations, what time do you feel like is a good time to start talking about financial family planning, especially with the kids?
Well, I guess the question becomes like, are you in a dating phase? Or is this like a girlfriend or a boyfriend? Are y'all already married? I think all of these conversations should probably be, as early as possible, just so you can see if you align with that person. But let's just jump right in and say y'all boyfriend girlfriend. Okay, let's start there. And you do y'all even want to be married? Like, some people don't want
That's
to be
deep.
married, bro, and that's your choice. But
Mm-hmm.
I think it should be a conversation. Like, if y'all do get married, what does that look like? Do you want to,
Mm-hmm.
go to a church, or do you want to just have a civil ceremony, right? Like, do you want to, go to Vegas? Like, do you want a destination wedding? What exactly do you want? And then, let's say, you had that conversation, and then you want to talk about children. Um, what does it look like? Like, I just is crazy to me that a lot of people just do things in life, with
Mm-hmm.
another person and don't have a conversation. Because I think that's how you end up in a lot of arguments. You
100%.
end up in a lot of arguments in the future because you didn't have conversations in the present.
Well, and they say that the majority of divorces, well over 50% of divorces end because, or what marriages end in divorce because of finances, right? And so that's a very humbling statistic when you look at it. Like, okay, if I had my money in tow, if we planned this out appropriately, if we both got our careers on the right path, that would that would save us a lot of heat going forward. And so, as far as like when is it, I think this conversation starts with the children, right? It starts when you're a young age and people preparing for your kids to go out into the world, out into the dating environment. And so, for me, when I look at it, I'm looking at family planning. Okay, it would have helped in middle school if we had conversations about the birds and the bees, ramifications, and preparations as far as, hey, financially, these are the things that you're going to have to look forward to if you jump the gun too fast, right? I remember in middle school when they gave out the little babies, everybody thought it was a cute experience, but nobody talked about the dollars behind that experience. There wasn't a monopoly game behind them giving them the babies as far as the money goes. There was just okay, the baby's crying, this is exhausting, be a good mother, etc. But on the guys end, we was just like, okay, they walking around carrying these baby dolls, but like, what does that actually mean, right?
Mhm.
Even though studies show that people are having engaging in intimate interactions early on, and so those conversations need to happen. As far as I think the birds and the bees ramifications, what happens, how much a child's going to cost you if this happens, needs to happen in middle school. What do you say, Sean?
Man, you bring back memories of like when I used to watch TV and people used to have the little babies,
Mm-hmm.
or the egg. I've seen that before. Um, but yeah, I don't think I ever had any of that happen in middle school. A lot of my conversations happened with my parents when it came to the birds and the
Mm.
bees.
Okay.
Um,
Did they
they just
tie it
said,
to money?
you said, was it tied to money? Nah, they were just more so like make sure you protect yourself and stuff like that. But it
Mm-hmm.
wasn't. I mean, my dad used to say that children are expensive, but that's about
Mm-hmm.
it. That was the end of the conversation.
Mm.
Um, but even like right now, as a teacher, I'm supposed to be having this conversation right now with my fifth graders. When I
Mm.
think at the end of this break, um, I think like 3 notifications went out to the parents or whatever, saying, "Hey, we're about to start talking about the birds and the bees, boys and girls, babies, and all this other stuff." And this would be the first time that I've ever had this conversation with the kids.
Mm.
So I have to take a look at the curriculum and see what's in there. But I'm gonna definitely talk about some money. I'm gonna probably say some things that might hurt a few feelings, about
Mm.
like not being prepared to have a kid, not having a lot of money, and things not gonna run as smoothly as you think. Right? You
Mm.
might think that your parents gonna help you, but then you find out they not once you had this kid because they be like, oh, we told you not to have one, and now you're on your own.
Well, and nobody helped them have that broach that conversation either. They're not even the deeper layer to this is 9 times out of 10, they're not even financially prepared for you to have a child, right? And in a lot of our communities, we talked about this a few episodes back, where people were talking about how we weren't, people weren't having financial conversations with us early, and a lot of people they weren't honest with their finances. And so that makes it, it kind of makes it a struggle for those conversations to evolve. And then the second piece, I feel like, is high school. In high school, we really got to talk numbers. We got to talk scholarships. We got to talk, hey, where are we going? We got to talk cost of living, because now I can help you get a part-time job and understand that taxes are a thing, right? I think it starts at that level. We can start talking daycare pricing, right? Because the heat is getting, if you've, been, in a position, you made smart decisions, so you ain't had a child up to that point, right? You got to start looking at the cost of daycare and things like that. It's like, okay, let me see your check, son. Let me see your check, daughter. Okay, so this is what happens if you decide that you're gonna step out here and have a child. All this money is gone. This is not coming up. But people don't broach these topics, and it makes it really complicated to navigate later on. And encouraging part-time jobs. Stepping up, saying, "Hey, get a part-time job so we can set you up on the right track. We get you a debit card. We can get you a credit card to where you can start learning, the financial literacy early, and see how that money actually works, right? And then that way you can use that responsibly." What's up?
I was actually curious to know, like, how much is like daycare. I know some daycares is really expensive, but I did a quick Google search. It said that on average, the infant child care costs about $216 a week, which is 17.1% of the national median household income. And then in Illinois, it say that it's about $12,000 a year.
Yeah, bro, that's crazy. So you thought taxes were taking your money. Now daycare is taking even more of your money. And the truth is when we're gonna get down to cost, because that leads into our second point here. What are the costs? So when we look at costs, as children reach school age, childcare typically goes down. But food, healthcare, and clothing typically goes up, right? More kids, more expenses, which makes it even more even more adamant that you pick the right partner, right? Because the right partner will help you, attack those expenses. And they're showing that more and more, like, society technically wasn't built for singles to live alone. Before World War II, there really wasn't even a middle class. There was the haves and the have-nots. But because of GI bills and things, and people putting out, situations where people could work, now you have individuals in the middle class that aren't going to be able to support the future, because that gap is becoming bigger with inflation. So we have to be very intentional about that. When we talk about the cost, what comes to mind for you?
When it comes to the cost of for children, or are you talking about for high schoolers? Overall, man, I had to write down a bunch of stuff. Starting from like when they're in infancy, I think about diapers. Man, diapers are expensive. I remember one time I had to go to like a little baby shower, and I got some diapers or whatever. I ain't realized how expensive diapers was. And to know that, the kid is gonna poop it and you gotta throw it away, man, that's like throwing money down the drain. Then we got the daycare. We already said that. Then you got the hospital bill, right? When you had a kid, you got to pay a hospital bill. Or when they might hurt themselves and you got to take them to a doctor or something like that. You got to pay for that.
Bro, hold on, real quick. Before you keep going, I'm going to show this video real quick, you know what I'm saying, of the young bull here showing you what your finances do. Watch this.
So you're gonna just leave the tap on and ignore me?
Just running water. Just throwing the water down the drain. Just,
hey,
I mean,
water.
Hey, but you pay bills. It's a little bit different when you
but
when you're not tied to the money.
But yeah, like kids might need tutoring. They might need private tutoring. They might need school supplies. Maybe they gotta take trips or whatever, like a school field trip, and they need some money. Maybe they gotta go to a club, but they need to buy some stuff for a club. New clothes, new shoes, food. Right? I saw that you said earlier that they increase in food, right, as they get older because they're gonna eat more.
Oh, yeah.
Maybe when you're a teenager, you're going, or 10 years old, whatever, you might get them a phone, right? So now they got a phone bill. They take up more electricity because they're using, the electricity to play games or watch TV in their room. When they get a little bit older, maybe you got to put them on your car insurance. It's just so many things like that kids need. Your children are gonna need, and you got to pay for it. But I see Zora also put something in the chat. You can put that on the screen.
She said, if you're in a job that doesn't have parental leave or your work PT, that's missed work days where you aren't getting paid, and the kid is still costing money each day. Yeah, and that's the thing is them being sick, you got to be home with them. So you're not getting any money. You're actually moving backwards because you have to sit with the child. Especially what makes it worse is if you're in a one-income household, because then you're really not getting any money. Like there's nobody to support you on the other side. And that's why it's very important if you're going to take that step to have a valid partner. Maybe y'all not getting married, right? But at the same time, having a quality partner does matter for you. I can't tell people what type of lifestyles to live, but a lot of times it's better to be in a co-parenting environment where you can make, specific adjustments. Okay. At least have the relationship with your child's other parent. They're like, hey, I need some money to cover down on this. Do you got it? And a lot of that comes down to empathy and actually sometimes holding your tongue, because you might not agree with everything. So you have to pick your battles on what you decide to argue with. And that's something that was very important to me, having a daughter. Me and her mother were never together, right? As far as dating relationship wise. So having those conversations are certain things that I hold my tongue on, because I'm like, it's not worth the fight or the battle when we need to be taking care of the child. So, great point there, Zora. Hey, shout out to Spawn, the programmer. We appreciate you, fam, for tapping in. And so when you look at the cost, you still got some more costs for us?
I see a comment from Zora from a little earlier. She said you also have to identify if you can take care of yourself individually, take care of yourself as a couple, and then bring a person into this world who is totally dependent on you for all of their needs.
Yeah, well, and that's the point. That's perfect that she said that, because starting on the individual level, if you can't take care of yourself individually, you should probably reassess whether you should be having children. Because that's a whole nother layer. They're going to need a lot more sick care. They're going to need a lot more care, and a lot of people.
I can't hear you for some reason. Did you mute yourself? I see you talking, but I don't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you now.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I had to switch over for some reason. My mic went out. But so when you look at it, a lot of people can't take care of themselves on an individual level. Now they're trying to bring a child into a situation, and then once they brought the child in, now they're trying to bring in another stranger who they haven't had the time to vet, because they also have a child, right? So we're kind of compounding problems here instead of compounding our money and our resources and going through and properly planning. What are some things, and the audience can tune in on this as well. What are some things that you think are stopping people from having these conversations about cost?
To be honest with you, I think most people probably not talking about the cost of having a kid, because we keep a lot of our finances to ourselves because we look at it as a conversation that shouldn't be said publicly. And I think people just find it weird to have those type of conversations. It's kind of like religion and politics. You know what I'm saying? Like money is right there with it. I don't think a lot of people really know how much their partners make. Like boyfriend, girlfriends probably not having conversations about how much they making, and they probably not budgeting or anything like that. And even if they are budgeting, like, did they consider putting the child in their budget if they're deciding to have a child, or if a child is on the way? Like, I just don't think a lot of people aren't thinking about it, or having these conversations because it's not typically normal to talk about money.
Well, and that's a good point. I'm glad you brought that up because earlier this week I was on a date and I asked, hey, how much do you make? It was one of the first conversations that I had, right? Because I need to understand if you say you're intentional about relationships. And so a lot of people, that is very like, oh my goodness, are you? I'm like, and I'm transparent about it, right? Because I'm like, if we're deciding to be intentional and that we want this to go somewhere, I need to understand what I'm financially getting into. Because 9 times out of 10, I might have to, foot the bill for, a lot of things. Traditionally, they typically want a man who can provide, which is fine. But I also have to know, and usually typically the income will give me a baseline on what the debt ratio is. Because one thing, people will talk about how much they make more than they'll talk about how much they owe. Because that's a whole nother conversation. That's when, things really go scorched earth. So did you have anything else for the cost?
No, that's it for now.
So if we're looking at strategies for financial planning, I look at this in two ways, right? Pre-child and post-child. So when we talk about financial planning, I'm looking at location matters, right? So when you decide that you're going to have a child, living on a coast, East Coast, West Coast, and living in cities are more expensive. So when you're leaving college, make those understand the conversation, say, hey, with yourself, like, hey, where do I actually want to live? Where is most cost effective for me right now in this moment if I want to have a family? What is the housing like in those markets, in those areas? Because Texas might look good right now, but by the time that you decide to have a child, everybody from California is going to Texas and going to the South, right? So they're filling up a lot of these cities and the price is skyrocketing. Miami is no longer a place where they actually want tourists there anymore. They don't even want spring break to typically happen in Miami anymore because the prices are going up, right? So we have to think about it before we relocate. This also taps into, before your parents kick you out of the nest, right? They should probably consider the fact that somebody's going to need to take care of them, right? And if they didn't do the proper financial planning, it probably behooves them to let you stay in the house so you get your money and your bread up. So that way that sets you up for success later. So that way you can come back and look out for them, right? But if they're rushing you out the house, you got to move, you got to leave, it kind of breaks that bond a little bit. You know what I'm saying? And so, I was talking about location, coasts and cities. Try to stay away from those at first. Education. Start saving early for your child's education. Start looking at your education from a realistic standpoint. When we talk about education, maybe you go to the junior college or, I joined ROTC. So the majority of my tuition was taken care of. The only student loans that I have is relative to cost of living and books, right? So look at those situations. Start, one of the things where my nephew, we're going to have a conversation. He's going into his sophomore year and I'm going to, convince him to go talk to his guidance counselor to see what scholarships are available. Because my junior year, I kind of popped in too late, but I did get a few scholarships. But there were scholarships that, hey, if I would have started sophomore year, I would have got full rides to whatever institution that I wanted. Or I could have stayed at the crib, got the full ride to, SIU or whatnot. There were just other opportunities out there that I didn't quite know about. Like even for me, I have some tuition assistance left over from that I didn't use for my deployments. And so when you're in the military, every time that you deploy, you add more percentages to your tuition assistance, and then you can use that you can actually use that for your kids. You might owe a couple more years on your contract, but you can sign it over to your children later, so that way they can utilize those benefits as well. So we got to look at all our avenues, and like we said earlier, make sure you're planning for childcare. So when it comes to pre-child, what strategies do you suggest, Shawn?
I think taking a good look at how much you're saving would determine like, do you even make enough in order to have a child right now?
Ooh.
And then the next question should be, should I change jobs or should I pick up another job?
Mm-hmm.
I also think, let's say I wrote down another question. Who will watch the kid? Right?
Yeah.
I think that's a conversation that should be had before you have a kid. Who's going to be the one to watch the kid? right?
Mm-hmm.
So if both of y'all gotta work, then who gonna watch the kid? Do you gotta pay in order for that person to watch the kid? Is it gonna be the grandparents? Are they retired? Are they able to
Are they
watch
healthy?
it? Because more than likely the parents probably not even retired. So you probably got to pay for some daycare or something along those lines. When it comes to post-child, I think when you have the child and you have your partner, I think constantly checking in on them and asking them how do they feel will be a good thing to ask. Or is there anything I can do to alleviate your stress? Like, do you need me to go to the store to buy, some food that you really been wanting? Or, do you want me to watch the kid for a little bit while you take a bubble bath, or you want to hang out with a friend or something like that? I think it's some things that may happen when you have the child that may be completely different than the conversations you had before the child. Like, I think when the actual child comes, things may change because the baby will be crying and stuff at night, and then you kind of sleep deprived, and maybe you're not thinking rationally, right? So I think constantly asking those questions in the midst of everything that's going on when it happens is very important too. Don't just be like, oh, well, we had this conversation, you said you'll be good. I think constantly asking, like, what can I do to help you right now, is really good.
No, that's real. And that process is really relative to maintaining and keeping a healthy marriage. Because when you talk about even any marriage, relationships, any of those things, right? Because in a lot of those instances, a lot of people feel like the other person doesn't care. And a lot of people are leaning on traditional values where they saw their dad, go to work and then he was tired, kicked up his feet, had a beer. But now we live in a day and age where both people are typically in the household and they're working, right? So you have to balance those things out and make sure that you're looking after each other. This is a team game. This is not a you had the baby, this is my baby, that's your baby. It's a we conversation, but you have to look at both palettes and understand, okay, what does this person bring to the table? What's dad's strength? What's mom's strength? What can I improve on? Like and here's the thing, is if you feel like your person's not making enough money, have that conversation earlier and sit down and game plan. Like, hey, you know what? I went and got the PMP. That helped raise my salary, right? The project management professional certification, right? What can we do with our current situation, our current status? How can we level up in the workforce to create a plan to where we're not struggling throughout this child's life, right? Because you might have started rough, but you don't have to finish rough. You can start rough, start with and then get into the 𝗕𝗓𝗄𝗃 plan and start putting away that money for that emergency fund. So that way, when that child does get sick, hey, child happened on accident, whatever, things do happen. But through planning intentionally, planning out that process, that's going to help you. Hey, I'm going to make more money now. Okay. I'm going to make more sacrifices. So that way, when an emergency does come up, we can cover it. I'm going to get insurance. That's one of the biggest things that's huge is, shout out to insurance, man. I didn't even, my car windshield, saying it got a crack in it, but I got the emergency fund money. I got the deductible. I'm gonna be able to pay it. I'm gonna be able to get my windshield fixed on Friday. Right. So it's one of those situations where that proper planning will save you a whole lot of headache in the end. As far as housing, I'm looking at, the 30-year mortgage, right? Avoiding that. Understanding, hey, it's okay to rent. Let me say that again. It's okay to rent. You don't have to own a home. Not everybody should own a home, especially not in this market. People don't understand when you own the home, you got to cut the grass, you got to maintain. If something happens with, something bad happens with a storm or whatever, you've got to be able to eat that cost in between the insurance covering down on those things. And if you don't have the proper resources to do so, you probably shouldn't own a home, right? The water heater goes out, the boiler goes out. Those are all expenses. The upkeep of the home, in a lot of neighborhoods, the homeowners association, they're gonna get on you if the grass ain't cut at a certain time. The city will do that too. When we lived in our small town, shout out to Carbondale, Illinois, they would put signs in the yards because the yards weren't cut to the right length, right? And then you get a fee, and then there's another fee, and then there's another fee, right? So being intentional about those major purchases. Hey, with the car. Right now, do we need 2 cars? Or is it because I want to appease my wife or appease my husband, so we got 2 cars? Or can somebody, shout out to my guy Mo. He live in Florida, and for a while they just swap out the car. He was he was taking the bus, he was taking the train to get to work, and she used the car because she had the kids, right? So that goes back to that mutual respect that you talked about in the household in those conversations, is making sure that you're planning ahead. You look like you had something to say. You was right.
Yeah. You just said insurance, and I wanted to make a final point with life insurance. So let's say, you don't have insurance, your partner don't have insurance, but you got a kid and something happened to one of y'all. Like, remember, you probably built this dream of, being able to take care of this kid on 2 incomes, but now you only got one. I think revisiting life insurance should also be a topic of discussion, and probably taking a life insurance policy out on both of y'all and the kid in case anything happen. Like, at least y'all will be covered for a couple years.
Well, and that's huge, bro, because even, a lot of times when, as millennials and, what I'm saying, like older millennials, young millennials, and, Gen Z, we go into the process of, filling out the HR paperwork, and we was like, I don't need that. Nah, that look like it costs too much. Oh, no. But this time that I went into the job, I'm like, okay, let me look at line by line. Okay, I need that. All right, I need that, because I'm also transitioning out of the military. And I'm like, okay, I need to cover down on that. And I need that benefit to where I'm squared away. And they, when they come out of your check, they might sting a little, you know what I'm saying? But they will save your life in the end and save your situation and make sure that your family is properly taken care of. So, Shawn, before we wrap up, did you have anything else?
No, that's it.
And as we wrap up, the biggest things, that we want you to continue to consider is, hey, be intentional about your family, be intentional about your finances, be intentional about your planning for the future. Just because you haven't made the best decisions doesn't mean you can't come back in the 4th quarter and go out with a bang and get you a championship. You know what I'm saying? You didn't play these first 3 quarters, or if you ain't played any quarters at all, heed this wisdom. Don't have the extra kids before you know you can financially take care of them. Choose your partner wisely, right? Wisdom trumps experience. Understand what are the costs, and then strategize for financial, for family planning. You can do it if you think you can. And so, without further ado, this has been another episode of Bag Talk 101. I'm Tommy.
I'm Shawn.
And we appreciate y'all.